Hey everyone, and welcome back to your weekly Linux and open source news video. This week we've got KDE stating their 3 main goals for the future, and they're nice if a bit vague. We also have the release of KDE 6.2 beta with a few improvements, but it doesn't look like a huge release like 6.0 or even 6.1 were. And we also have Square Enix funding a Linux distribution, of course a gaming Linux distro. And we also have a lot of stuff, including this message from our sponsor. So this video is sponsored by Proton Mail. You probably all heard about them, but if that's not the case, just know that they provide you with an end-to-end encrypted email account hosted in Switzerland with all the privacy bells and whistles you will ever need to ensure that your email stays private. Not even Proton employees can access their contents, just you. And Proton Mail doesn't just give you a solid email, calendar, contacts, online drive, VPN, and password manager in the same account. They've actually been firing on all cylinders lately. They launched Proton Docs, a private alternative to Google Docs, and they also added Proton Scribe, a privacy-focused assistant that can write emails for you from a simple prompt. It can also shorten or expand emails, proofread them, or make them more formal all in one click. It supports a lot of languages already, and if you're worried about the privacy implications of AI tools, Scribe is trained using open source models, its code is open source as well, and it doesn't use any of your email data for training. Nothing you type is logged or saved anywhere. You can even run it locally instead of on Proton server, so straight from the device if you prefer that. So if you feel the need for privacy, click your free Proton account using the link in the description below, and you can also check out their other plans for more storage space and more features. Okay, so you might remember that a while back, KDE asked the community to submit goals that KDE could try and achieve long term. And these goals have been announced at Academy now, and they're pretty interesting, if a bit vague. The first is streamlining the app development experience, as in making sure developers have a good time creating apps for KDE. The goal is notably to enhance the experience of building KDE apps without using C++, so with Rust, Python, and other languages. That's a really solid goal. GNOME did achieve this a while back with libadwaita, and they now have the absolute best app ecosystem on Linux that we've ever seen. So if KDE can manage that as well, that would be cool. The second main goal is improving inputs for KDE, as in making sure drawing tablets, controllers, mice, handhelds, complex input methods for people who need accessibility features, tablets, touchscreens, 2-in-1s, basically any form of input has to be well supported on KDE, so anyone can use that desktop with their peripherals of choice. And the last goal is to make sure KDE can gain new contributors for Plasma, but also for key projects like Kdenlive, Krita, J'ai Compris, and others. The goal isn't only to recruit individuals to contribute code, testing, marketing, triaging, and other important tasks, but it's also to recruit institutions and organizations that could support these projects. This goal is obvious. Without contributions, you can't make good software and you can't grow to make sure everyone has a good time with your desktop and your apps. And these are all pretty good goals to have, but they feel a bit vaguely defined to me. I was expecting more actionable stuff, like for example, finish HDR support in a year and a half, or things along those lines. Now maybe it's just because these goals were just announced and all the actions that need to be taken to reach them will be announced later as a plan is formulated for each of those goals. Still on KDE, Plasma 6.2 now has a beta for testing with a bunch of interesting changes. The main one is per monitor brightness controls, meaning you can switch the brightness for your integrated laptop display or the external monitor individually. We've got better Wayland color management support, so better HDR support. There's sticky keys support under Wayland, or the ability to disable smooth scrolling in KDE applications. You will also have a new apply updates and shut down option when turning off your computer. You'll get more accurate license information for apps in Discover, and the usual system settings pages improvements, this time to accessibility, to the keyboard settings or the Thunderbolt settings. Users of drawing tablets will also get much better support here, plus some more Wayland protocol support in Kwin, and a lot of smaller UX and UI touches here and there, like the ability to rename audio devices or double-clicking a .ovpn file to automatically install and configure a new VPN. The final release of Plasma 6.2 should come around early October, I think it's on the 8th, and of course you'll get a dedicated video showcasing all those new features straight here on this channel. Now, you might remember Playtron OS, the Linux-based gaming-focused operating system that is currently in development and only aims to work with device manufacturers. They don't want to make their own devices, they want to have partnerships to ship Playtron OS as the default on new devices. And Playtron OS now has financial investments from Square Enix, alongside Samsung with their Samsung Next fund, and other less well-known investors. Square Enix actually said that this investment is to make sure that their game's distribution is expanded and also to explore the possibilities that are only possible when harnessing the full power of an OS. Yes, the possibilities repetition is theirs, not mine. So Playtron OS also has a first alpha that's apparently been tested across the Aya Neo 2, the ROG Ally, the GPD Win 4, the Lenovo Legion Go, and both models of the Steam Deck, LCD and OLED. It looks like it has its own interface to sync and link your Steam account to Playtron, and then it has its own interface to browse games. It looks like sort of a cross between the Steam Deck interface and the end of the PS3 era interface. It's nothing shockingly bad or exciting here. Not all of their work is open source for now. They confirmed that only the OS code will be open at first, and then they will open more things as time goes on, but there's no guarantee that the entire project will be open source. They also acknowledged the issue of anti-cheat, and they said they want to work with partners to enable these. Hopefully, the involvement of Square Enix might put a little bit more pressure on some anti-cheat developers to make that work, but yeah, who knows. And also, Playtron hired Lutris's founder and main developer, Mathieu Commandant. He joined their team to work on UI-related things, and he posted this on Patreon as a public post that everyone can see, saying that he simply could not rely on his savings and donations anymore to make a living off of Lutris, and that he had to take a job. He says that Playtron OS has a mission that he likes, and he also touches on a few issues that the community had with Playtron as a distro. The first one was the fact that this OS announced they would not support native Linux games, only games running through Wine and Proton, and Mathieu said that this support will come in the future. The other sticking point was the involvement of Playtron with Web3 and crypto, and Mathieu clarified that yes, the first partner to ship with Playtron OS installed is a Web3 company, but Playtron itself is not, and they're not involved in that kind of stuff themselves. So this is reassuring regarding Playtron OS, the fact that they will at some point support native Linux games, the fact that they're not involved with crypto specifically, them hiring a well-known person that has worked on Linux-related stuff, Linux gaming-related stuff. All of this is reassuring. Them having the backing of big companies is also kind of nice for their future. The only thing is, I wish they would develop everything in the open as open source, but let's remember that Valve doesn't open source their Steam client, their big picture interface, and all the UI parts of SteamOS. So if we don't knock Valve for that, we can't really knock Playtron for that either. Now, there's a lot going on with GNOME this week. First, they've now officially started their search for their new executive director, as the previous one left to do other things than managing non-profits. If you feel like you would know how to run something like the GNOME Foundation, the package doesn't look too bad, and you have until September the 20th to apply. Now, in terms of features and new things, there's also a lot. All of the Sovereign Tech Foundation projects are moving forward with home directory encryption, better shell notifications, work on supporting sys updates D, a system D tool to let immutable distros apply Delta updates. We also have a lot of work on accessibility with a lot of stuff happening in Orca, the screen reader. There are also some new APIs for Flatpak and Wayland, notably work on a USB portal to make sure that apps don't need to have access to all of your devices just so they can access a USB drive. Work on making sure Flatpak apps can interact with accessibility tools is also underway. And if that's not enough, there are also plenty of things happening in libadwaita with a new spinner widget to replace the GTK1 that could introduce lag and wasn't really suited to different app window sizes. They also added other widgets for developers like button rows or a new alert dialog that looks very macOS-like. And they added support for accent colors in libadwaita, which will be used by GNOME 47 next week. Now, apps will still be able to override this accent color if they want, if they have their own color and identity. Of course, these accent colors are supported through the settings portal, meaning all other desktop environments and apps from those DEs can pick that color and use it as well. And as per GNOME Apps, Papers, the new PDF reader, will support digital signing of documents, which is nice. Pipeline also got an update. It's an app that lets you follow YouTube or PeerTube creators and get all their videos in one interface without having to navigate to each service's subscription feed. And of course, I couldn't help but being pleased to see my channel being displayed in the screenshot for this application, which might have contributed to why I'm mentioning here. Who knows? I think it's an interesting app nonetheless to escape the For You or subscription feed of those giant platforms such as YouTube. Anyway, all of this cool stuff in GNOME is sort of triggering my need to change desktops again, just as I settled into KDE, so please tell me good things about KDE in the comments so I do not switch, please. Now, it looks like Ubuntu is trying to improve their snap packages a bit more. They're working on adding more control over the permissions of each snap. I mentioned their new prompting client as I talked about Ubuntu 24.10 a few weeks ago, and it looks like this addition is confirmed for 24.10. This is a little daemon that will run in the background and will let you control permissions for your Snap apps through modal windows. For example, when the web browser wants to access a file that is in a subdirectory in your downloads folder, then you'll get a little pop-up which lets you decide if you let the app access the entire home folder, the folder where the file you're looking for is, just the file you requested, or the files of the same type, or a custom path pattern that you can set. You can then choose to give the app read, write, and execute permissions over this path or file, or choose if you want to grant this permission once or always. All of this is then stored in Ubuntu's new security center where you will be able to revoke those permissions or change them, apparently for each path and not for each app, judging from the screenshots. This is all experimental for 24.10, and in the future it won't just support directories, it will also cover devices like cameras or mics. And you know what? It is super nice to have that kind of granularity, but also this interface just will not work for 99% of normal users. It is way too busy and people will just not understand why you're asking them all of this. Of course, it is experimental and early days, so it will very likely be tweaked and improved in the future. Now, it was also a great week for EU finances, as both Apple and Google lost appeals against the European Commission, meaning they both have to pay sizable fines. In the case of Apple, it's $14 billion that have to be paid to Ireland because they were deemed to have skipped on taxes. This is a court case that dates back to 2016, which once again shows how unbearably slowly these issues are resolved. And Apple was deemed to have received illegal tax benefits from Ireland and had to repay all of them. Ireland didn't even really want that money. They actually said they felt they treated Apple fairly. But let's be fair, by taking that stance, they would have won on both sides. If Apple had won the appeal, Ireland could have said, hey, see, we told you, we didn't give any illegal tax benefits. And if Apple lost the appeal, just like they did, Ireland can say, oh no, well, we really thought we did a good thing, and then pocket 14 billion, which is pretty nice. As per Google, it's a 2.4 billion euros fine, so about $2.65 billion. This one is for abusing Google's dominant position by favoring its own shopping service on its search engine. Again, this dates back to 2017, so really slow as well. Google was ordered to pay, they appealed, and the appeal has now been resolved by the European Court of Justice. Google said that they're disappointed because they had implemented changes since 2017, so after the investigation concluded that they were abusing their dominant position. Which isn't exactly how things work. You can't build a monopoly and abuse it for years, and when someone says, hey, you have a monopoly and you're abusing it, say, oh, it's okay, I just implemented changes yesterday, so it's fine. No, you're still gonna get sued for the years of abuse. Now, of course, these amounts are ridiculous compared to these companies' valuations or even annual revenue. At that point, these fines should be dealt in a year at most, not over 8 years for the legal case, and they should be probably 10 times as high to have any form of impact. But right now, companies probably just budget them every 10 years, and it's like they place it somewhere where they generate interest, and so they make more money off of the interest than what they have to pay 10 years from now. So, not really efficient, but yeah, that's more money for the EU, so why not? And finally, there was an interesting article on Forbes written by Jason Evangelho, looking at how we kinda need a Steam Deck 2 soon if we want the deck to stay relevant. The issue being that the Steam Deck is awesome for indie titles and relatively old AAA games, but it's just not capable of playing the latest AAA titles anymore. Space Marine 2, Final Fantasy 16 or Star Wars Outlaws, none of them run properly on the deck even at their lowest settings. They just don't even reach 30 FPS. And we can only assume most brand new AAA games just won't be playable in good conditions in the future on the deck, especially compared to competing handhelds, which will ship with more powerful AMD APUs or even the latest Intel CPUs, which, if we can believe their marketing, beat all of what's available right now. Now the thing is, the deck doesn't need to run every game, but if developers see that this device has no chance of ever playing their game, even at 30 FPS low settings, then they won't bother with Linux compatibility at all. Because right now, Linux compatibility for developers, it's just a Steam Deck. If the Steam Deck can't run your game, then you don't even bother trying to make sure that any Linux platform could run that title. And I do agree with Jason that we need something more powerful than the Steam Deck to run those AAA titles. Not necessarily because we can't run these games, because we don't necessarily need to run all of these games on a handheld, but because if we don't have that kind of Linux-powered device that is able to run these games and that has good, sizable market share, then developers will just never bother implementing any kind of compatibility with Linux. They won't test on any Linux device with Proton, and I don't think Valve can fix every single issue with Proton themselves without developers at least making sure that stuff isn't too terrible. Now, what I'll make sure of is that you learn about our sponsor, Tuxedo Computers. They make laptops and desktops that ship with Linux out of the box. You don't need to install something over Windows, partition your drive, make sure that you can boot a USB drive. They ship with Linux. Of course, you can install the distro of your choice on them because they actively support the development of drivers for all the hardware that they sell. They have a big range of devices. Anyone should find something that fits their budget and their need. And personally, I only use their computers these days. All of my stuff, the channel, the podcast, everything is done straight from one of their laptops, and all of my gaming, including finishing Space Marine 2 yesterday, is done on one of their Tuxedo cubes. So really solid hardware. Click the link in the description if you want to know more about them. So, thanks everyone for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider doing all the usual YouTube niceties, subscribe, like, notification bell, comments, whatever else. And if you really enjoy the channel and you want to support it financially, there are plenty of links in the description, which comes with plenty of perks as well. And honestly, it's probably the cheapest Patreon out there for the amount of stuff you get. So, thanks for watching, and I guess you'll hear me in the next one. Bye!